Going on, everybody? Welcome to Distilling 101 Q&A, where we keep forgetting there's two buttons to go live and not one. I keep hitting it, and I'm like, waiting, tapping my fingers. Well, and there's two buttons. I got to hit twice. So I guess we're live now. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Looking forward to seeing some of y'all in a couple of weeks. So, go ahead and announce that now. Well, might wait till more people trickle in, but I won't be here, not next weekend, but weekend after next. I'll be in Maggie Valley for the Summer Jam. So that'll be a good time. All right, let me get these links out. Let me find my cheat sheet here. Right, here we go. Yeah. Got all my groups on here. Go ahead and see how many we get this time. I don't know. Maybe more. I don't know. We'll see. We shall see. But what's everybody got going on this weekend? I need to get Clint a link too. Let me do this first. Damn it. My mind, did I just share that to that group or not? Definitely don't want to share it twice with limited sharing ability, so I'll have to check, make sure. And I guess I did not. It's not there. Okay. Okay. Make sure it's there. Wow. I'm not seeing it. And then I posted it. We'll see. May have posted it twice accidentally. Well, that wouldn't be good. Anyway. We'll get them down here in just a second. Shouldn't take but a second. I hate this part. It's kind of hard to sit here and just ramble about anything. And all right, the stream's going okay. Hopefully I get a share more than I did last week initially. We shall see. I try to pick out a pretty diverse group because I know in certain groups we're pretty much the same people are in the same groups, but there's also some outlying groups that don't have a lot of the same people that most have. So I'm trying to be more diverse in my initial selection, because I can only do so many. So if some of you are wondering why some groups get picked early and others don't, it's because I'm trying to get out to more people. And by doing this way, I think I maximize that. Because there's a lot of us, like I say, usually every week almost, but there's a lot of us that are in the same groups, a lot of them in the militia and in the same groups, but also have, their own groups and stuff. So, and I'm one of those as well. So I try to get out to a lot of different people who aren't in the, oh wow, just like last week, actually less than last week, damn. I've lost my little pencil. I have to use a pen, but all right. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Maybe 11 shares. Crazy. I'd like to do better, but well, what's going on, Stephen? Good to see you, brother. What's going on, Tater? Good to see you, brother. Not much, man. Just chilling. Trying to get these links shared out. They don't let us get out to everybody I'd like to initially, so I have to wait an hour and share it again. Need to set up an alt or something, or I wonder. Wait a minute. I wonder if I could share this me individually. Let me try to do that. I also need to send this link. Mr. Clint. Yeah, slow. Facebook is slow for me tonight. Must be a lot of people on there. I hadn't heard from Clint, so he's probably working. It's one of his busiest times right now on the weekends, so he's pretty busy, which is a good thing. Gotta make that money. What's up, C-Shine? Good to see you, brother. What's going on, Dexter? Good to see you. What's going on, Rodney? I guess I should be saying hey to everybody. Hey, what's going on, Tater? Man, we got a pretty good beard too there, I see. Kind of look like Paul Tuttle a little bit in that small picture there. What's going on, everybody? Some of these, that's strange. What's going on, Dexter? Hey, Rodney. Nice fight. There's O'Sheen. What's going on, brother? So hope everybody's having a good weekend. Hopefully we can get some newcomers in here asking some questions and just getting started. We can get them going on the right path. What's going on, Mr. Toby? Good to see you, brother. There's old Toby. Before he shaved, cut his hair. He looks different without his beard and hair. I used to envy, man. He had long hair, and I can't even get much going on at all. Did you, brother? All right, we got a first timer, old timer, first timer. That's good. That's great. Have you given any thought into it? Yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to rock. I'll be there. I'll be there for sure, brother. I try to get down there every year. If I don't get there, I'm sick. Something's wrong with me. So, Keith, have you thought about what type of steel you want to get? A lot of times, first timers will end up with a Vever 3 pot, which is it's cheap, but you're going to end up having to do some work to it. Did you? Maybe I wish I could do that. I sure wish I could. Proofing, it's pretty easy, man. Just keep adding distilled water and keep checking your proof. Basically, if you've got like 120 proof, or let's just say 160 proof, and you add 50% of it. So if you got 10 ounces of 150 and you add 10 ounces of water, then you got 20 ounces of 80 proof. So anytime you add equal parts to it, it takes it down. So if you want to take it from, let's say, 160 half is to 120, you could add a quarter, right? So that'd take it down. Instead of half, it'd take it down a quarter, right? So fractions, you can fractionalize it pretty easy. It's not too bad. It does take a little getting used to, or you just pour a big pot and just stir in water and take the proof and just stir in more water, take proof until you get it where you want it and jar it up. Which a lot of people like that because it's a lot easier and you don't have to do the math. All right, brother. I know you're tired. Uh, I would say it's probably easier on a sugar wash because you're not going to have as much heads and fours, right? Whereas on a thin mash, you're going to have more heads and fours. Oh, so you're looking for a copper steel? Okay, well that's good. There's a lot of choices out there. I don't know that much about. I know Steven Steels used to make really good steels back in the day. I'm not sure if he's running it or if his son-in-law or son is or who is, but I know back in the day he did a good job and had a pretty good reputation. And I think his son took over and kind of went didn't get quite great customer satisfaction. I think most of the problem was attitude, not really the quality. Um, so I don't know much about their stuff. North Georgia, top notch. There's a lot of builders in the circle that do a really good job. I would name them, but inevitably every time I do, I forget one, and they're like, "God damn it! Why do you keep forgetting me, man? Why did you forget me? You named everybody but me." And inevitably, I always forget one. So yeah, it's the easiest way to do it. But yeah, I suggest joining one of the groups, and just chatting around. There's a lot of great builders, and the prices, vary fairly well as well. Some of the newer guys that are trying to get established and may not have as good a quality as some of the more established ones that have more experience tend to sell them considerably cheaper. But ones that are more experienced, sell a more refined product and they get compensated for it, and they're a little bit more expensive. Don't know a lot about Steven Stills except for he used to do top notch product back in the day. And he kind of took a hit. I think his son took over and they had some rocky roads and maybe Steven's taken back over again. If so, that's probably going to be definitely a good thing. He did really good work. North Georgia, top notch. They do great work. So if you narrowed it down to that, I would probably personally go with North Georgia. I know them and they're good people. They stand behind their product, but have a little bit of a wait time. So if you're not willing to wait, maybe find somebody else, or they may even recommend you. Or no, I don't know. They may be caught up. They'll let you know. It's a pretty good circle. They if they do, there's handful of builders that can make a good product as well. And I would name a handful, but as soon as I do, like I say, I'm going to forget somebody, and I don't want to do that. So that's why I try not to do names. I did once before and forgot my good buddy Wayne, and I was like, man, I can't believe I forgot Wayne. And so I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings and make anybody mad, and especially good friends and stuff. So I don't I know Phil, he helps put the show on, so I have to kind of give him props. But there's lots of people out there that can do good work for you. I would definitely ask around and find, who's got the least wait time if you're in a hurry, if you're not, don't have time, Andrew and them may be able to knock it out for you now. They may have a little bit of a wait time. So I don't know. But Stephen is running it. Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. That's for sure. What's going on, Adam? But if you're looking for copper steels, there's a lot of good builders, and join the militia and DIY shine, and just put it out there, that you're looking for steel and what size you're looking at. Let's see, did you say 10-gallon, 15-gallon? And just get in touch with them and ask for some quotes. I would definitely get some quotes. So and and turn times and quotes, and see who can match the quickest turn with the most reasonable price. There's a trade off there. Some of the cheaper ones may not have much wait time, but there might be a reason for that, right? It might not be the more refined steel that you're looking for, but if you're looking for a copper steel, I'd definitely do some shopping around. If you're not, like a lot of people, when they first get started, they'll go with a cheap 3-pot bever or a football steel or a keg steel, which I highly recommend for people that aren't sure if they'll like the hobby or not, or may have a limited budget. Definitely, the bever football and the keg steel definitely fit that bill, where a good size steel, 15 to 20, 15 gallons to 18 and a half, I think mine is. So decent size, about what you're looking for, but at a very very low price. It's like a keg, you can pick those up $35-$45 and have somebody weld some ferrules on you and be into a keg for 125 or so, after they get the ferrules welded on there for you. And make a larger clean out so you can get in there and clean it out. I ran a keg steel forever, and that was always my biggest issue. Was it was tough to clean out, right? And I didn't have a pressure washer, so I ended up having to take it to the damn car wash, and people wondered why I was washing a beer keg at the car wash. But that was the biggest issue. What's going on, Brian? Copper Steel Co. Yeah. Adam does good work. Yeah, there's a lot of them out there that do good work, and I would definitely join the group and ask. It'll save you some money and some time, and you can't go wrong with North Georgia and Stephen Steels. From the stuff I've seen back in the day that he turned out some really nice work. So if he's the one that's doing it again, as Seashine said, then that's definitely a good thing. But we got a lot of people that are in the group that we can definitely, vouch for. And if you want to join the group and ask around, kind of price shop a little bit and see, there's a handful of good builders. Yeah. What's going on? I'm not Phil. I'm Bad Santa. I'm Phil's buddy. We just we're all part of the militia. I'm an admin in the militia, and we all run on Phil's podcast, and I broadcast to his YouTube page. No, but I have seen the results of an steel explosion. And if y'all want to look on Mythbusters, there's a lot of people say, oh, it's just steels don't explode like that. They, that's all just a a conspiracy myth. It doesn't have Mythbusters replicated it, and yeah, it does. It blew the roof off that shack, man. It was crazy, but it was a good Mythbusters episode. But yeah, I've seen the results of some still explosions. We have some people here in the group that's had some not necessarily explode, but flare up on them. You know, become like a little flamethrower. You know, and lost some members of the militias, lost family members to people that got burnt from distilling. Um, and I've seen some news, you know, some newsreels and stuff where people had, that you know were shining in a cargo container, you know, and about blew all the walls off it, you know, from the explosion. Yeah, those flamethrowers are pretty cool. But I've been pretty lucky, knock on wood. I've had some, you know, spit a lot of steam from the seams, you know, back in the days when I had to patch, you know, the seams with putty and stuff, and patch leaky pipes with biscuit dough. But I never had any explode on me, thank God. But I've had probably more issues with dangerous propane, you know, and issues with that. You know, not lighting right off the bat, and then about burning my beard off or mustache at the time, mustache off. Yeah, it's I'd say the gas was the closest I ever come to getting burned up was just from the propane. But yeah, there's a lot of good coppersmiths out there that can definitely hook you up. I'd highly recommend jumping on the Moonshine Militia in Facebook and just you know tell them when you want to join, just to, you know, tell them that you've heard about it here and you want to get on and get some quotes on a steel. You know, I should put a list together that I could share. That way, I don't forget anybody. Then just keep adding friends to the list. But I don't have a list, and my memory's not the best. And I know just sure as I'm sitting here, if I start trying to name everybody, I'm gonna forget somebody. I tried that once or twice before, and ended up forgetting people. And I'm like, I can't believe of all people to forget. And I forgot my buddy Wayne. Yeah, I've seen those flamethrowers they got for sale. Pretty expensive though, man. I don't know. I think you could probably get an air compressor and build one. I don't know. It'd be probably pretty risky. I should talk about how to do that on here. They might ban us. Definitely might ban us on here, man. We can't. Gotta be careful what we say on Facebook and YouTube. They don't like talking about things like that, especially when you start talking about how to make them and do it. Definitely don't want to do that. Get everybody in trouble. But 15 is a pretty good start place. 15, 20 gallon is a good place to start. A lot of people start with a 5 or 10 and they regret, you know, not having a little bit bigger steel. You know, they want to get a little bit more product because I will say that making a mash for a 5 or a 10 gallon is maybe 10 minutes less than making one for a 50. You know, you're just grinding a little less grain. The rest of it's boiling water, you know, so you got a little bit of time, you know, a little bit more volume of water takes a little longer to boil, and the larger amount of grain takes a little longer to grind. And that's basically, other than the size of the fermenter. Excuse me, I just ate and drank that big drink of pop and I'm burping. Um, but that's about the biggest, you know, time consumers is waiting for that water to boil, right? So grinding the grain, you know, whether you do 20 pounds or 50 pounds, you know, not going to be that big a difference. Um, So it's better to, even if you do have a smaller steel, you don't always have to do a mash. And I think that's one mistake a lot of people make is I've got a 10-gallon steel, I'm going to do a 10-gallon mash, and it's like there's nothing says that you can't do a 40-gallon mash and run it 4 times, and it'll keep, it's not like it's going to spoil on you if you cover it, and especially if you airlock it and keep it cool. So yeah, that's definitely a good thing to have, and a vacuum too, vacuum relief to keep it from imploding, right? But it's always good, regardless, to have a valve on top of your steel. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, I'll just lift the cap off, or I'll just take that ferrule off there, or that clamp off there, and try clamp off, and kind of air it out and let it get." It's so much easier just to open up a valve, half inch, 3/4 inch valve. It's all it takes, is just break that vacuum, and can save yourself from a steel, imploding, and relying on these cheap Chinese vacuum relief or pressure relief valves. Pressure relief will kick off steam when it gets too much pressure. Really pretty important. If we deal with very low pressures in distilling, 3.5 to 4 in that range, maybe a little bit more if you have multiple jar rigs or a couple of thumpers, but really don't have a whole lot of pressure. So 5 psi or a 10 psi, blow off valve would be fine, right? But a vacuum relief also, to keep it from imploding. I've seen a buddy of mine bought a brand new 20-gallon. He was so proud, nice, spent a couple $1,000, his first time running it, forgot all about pulling that cap, had that thumper full, and it pulled the vacuum and sucked that thing in just like a can, just like squeezing a can. And he had to, take it, and guy blew it out with compressed air, and kind of blew it out a little bit, and he hammered on it, and he did a pretty good job patching it back up. But yeah, yeah. Yeah, a lot of people open the cap, pull the cap off, take that tri clamp off, lift it off. You can do that, but that's 200 degrees. What you're handling is 200 degrees, right? So I have to get your grill gloves. It's flimsy. 3/4 inch valve, just ball valve, just open it. That's all you gotta do. So much easier. But it's nice to have the vacuum relief, if you do forget to open that valve, if you did a little bit too much testing in your cuts, and get a little buzz on and forget about, oh shit, I forgot to open up that valve. And you hear that vacuum relief, it gets sucked in and air go in there. It can definitely save you a lot of money, but I just wouldn't want to trust $2,000 steel to a $5 Chinese part. So having that valve on there definitely help have a backup, for sure. And it's nice too to have that valve. You can open it up and put a funnel on it, turn off your heat, of course, turn off your gas heat, and pour, if you want to make a second run, pour everything back in there and run it again on top of the back set. If you want to do it that way. Or if you have a drain on it, you can drain it and, pour more in through the top that way without having to take the setup down at all. Put your 1-inch valve on there if you want to, a little brass valve, be fine. Yeah, yeah. If you have a shine shack and it's going to be something that sits assembled, yeah, definitely go with maybe a larger. But yeah, if you're a kitchen distiller, or you have to take everything out and do it on the back deck or patio, and do it on the turkey fryer, and have to carry everything in and out every time and store it, in the garage or something like that, then yeah, maybe a smaller setup would be fitting. 8 psi is plenty. Yeah, because we deal with 3.5 to 4, 5 maybe if you have a couple of thumpers. 6, 8 psi. If it blows 8 psi, you did have a problem that you definitely needed. Yeah, yeah. I just put a valve in there, man. Just open it up and use that. You don't want that pressure relief valve to go off. That goes off when you have too much pressure. But a vacuum release is also important, because if you're running a thumper and you got a closed system, even with an open system, if you got a little dip in your worm, it could pull vacuum too, and not, you could just, it's easy to do, especially with that, lighter gauge copper. It can suck right in on you, man. Now, keg steel probably not as easy to implode, but I'm sure can, given the right circumstances. But a big, tall, thin copper, yeah, it's definitely, it can fall victim really quickly to a vacuum. So having that valve on there is really, really awesome. You can just open it up and not have to worry about taking the cap off. And if you got a drain on it, then you can drain. How many gallons you started with. So you started with, let's say, 8 gallons, and you distilled, and you got 2 gallons off of it. That that you got 6 left in there, right? So you drain 5 out, and then proof your liquor down and add it back in there, right? On what little level of back set you got left, and you know that you're not going to be overfilling anything. So that works out well. It's hard to clean corners. That's why, it's nice too when you have a rounded bottom versus an edge that's just sharp edge like that versus rounded. A lot of the steels stuff are considered sanitary if they have rounded bottoms. Usually you only see that in your commercial jacketed setups, but square, you have a lot of corners and it's not as sanitary, and it's a lot more difficult to clean and get into. And the same with barrels, it's hard to roll a square, hard to roll a box around. Yeah, it definitely is. You're going to get a lot more flavor if you ferment on the grain than off. You see a lot of beer makers ferment off the grain, and for them, it's because you get less haze, less proteins. For them, you've gotten all you really need out of that grain for that beer. So they generally take it off the grain. Same with winemaking. You do a primary fermentation on the fruit, and then once it's done fermenting, you do a secondary fermentation off, right? So you're basically removing it from the fruit. But in that circumstance, a lot of brandy makers would just go ahead and distill at that point instead of doing a secondary fermentation. I like doing the secondary, so I can get some esterification, some good flavors before I do my brandy rum. But for beer making, probably better to ferment off. But for whiskey, probably better to do it on. And if you can distill on the grain, even better. If you do distill on the grain, you have to do it in such a way it's not going to scorch, right? So sparging it, and that's basically getting that yeast and all the small fine stuff off the grain. So you want to sparge it and get all that yeast and all that fine stuff off your grains, and kind of through a mesh, and kind of clean it up real good, and then save those larger particles to distill on to get more flavor. You can put those in your thumper, and you can you get that second distillation on those grains, and it'll impart a lot more flavor than just if you had maybe a nothing in your thumper, or you had a little bit of a mash, juice in your thumper or a wash. Added a HG pressure gauge to my 10 gallon, and when it's up to temp 109, the pressure gauge will show 3 to 4. Yeah. Yep. 3 to 4 is about what we get. Sure. Yep. That's about exactly what I've measured. About 3.5 to 4 psi, and it's it's about what we get. It's not like a pressure cooker that we cook, that's intended, generally with a pressure cooker, you're going above the boiling temperature of water, right? That's why we put it under pressure. It gets hotter, right? Than it normally would without the pressure, right? Because pressure increases the temperature. And it allows us to boil things and sterilize things at above 210 degrees, right? Because that's the boiling point. So, you'll have a 5, 10, 15 little weight that you put on those pressure cookers, depending on how hot you want it to get. The higher the pressure, the hotter it's going to get. So pressure canning for like meats and stuff, you definitely want to get that higher temperature to try to kill off as much of the botulism and other things in there that you can. What's going on, Mr. Patty? Good to see you, brother. Uh-oh. Awesome, man. 26 gallons. That's nice, man. Okay, if I'm starting out, can I use plain old active dry yeast from the store, or should I use a different type of yeast? You can absolutely, and recommend it. Learning. You want to try to keep it as simple and inexpensive as possible because we're going to make mistakes. I remember my first half a dozen time I've scorched, the cornmeal, and I wasn't even converting. I was just trying to add sugar and cornmeal, and I was young. I didn't know how to cook or do anything properly, but yeah, I'll be at Maggie for sure. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I did bread yeast, Flashman's bread yeast for ages, and it's perfectly fine. It's a lot of people, the yeast knobs is be like, oh my god, I can't believe him told somebody to be perfectly fine, and it is. Um, but it does have a unique flavor, and some people like it, some people don't. But for beginning, I think it's perfectly fine to use. You'll get a good fresh yeast. It's inexpensive. Now, I would recommend, and we'll talk about in a minute, doing a starter. But yeah, it's perfectly fine, and I would recommend for your first ferment to do pretty much get you some oatmeal. Oh my god, cornmeal. Yeah, you can put some oats in there too, but cornmeal, and heat it up, cook it, and get it going about 150, and then add you some sugar. Get about a pound and a half of sugar and a pound of cornmeal to a gallon of water, right? So you can do that, and pretty much without a hydrometer. No, you're getting a decent amount of sugars in there to get you, good starting gravity, and you'll get some good corn flavor from it. So it's not as simple as a sugar wash, but I will say too, if it's going to be a sacrificial run the first time you've ever run the still, it probably would go with the sugar wash. That the reason being is it's going to be something you're going to pour out and you're not going to drink, and it's used to clean things out. See, you want to kind of wash your still with water and maybe some Dawn dishwashing liquid. Rinse that really well, and then maybe clean it out. You boil some acid or some acid, which is usually a vinegar or citric acid and water, and kind of boil that off to clean off anything. The water and the Dawn will take off most things that are water soluble and a few of the oily stuff, because Dawn does pretty well with oils. But the acid from the vinegar wash and or citric acid wash, and boil that off, and that'll get things that are acid soluble. Well, some people take it the third step, and they'll do things that are alcohol soluble, because those are the three basic solutes that will break things down: water, acid, or alcohol, or even, I guess, a petroleum type product. But alcohol being the one that we can, consume and not worry about. I mean, gasoline works well too, but we're not going to work with gas, right? Or a lot of people will use paint thinners and things like that to clean with. That's a solvent to a lot of things, but we can't use those because they're not food grade. So we'll use alcohol instead. That'll get a lot of things that are soluble in alcohol. So you cover those three bases, especially if you got a copper steel. It's great to cover all those three bases. With a stainless setup, if it's a beer keg, you're not going to be that worried about it. You got a new, stainless column or something coming off that. You're going to want to clean it real well, and maybe run some hot water through it just to check your seams, right? Good cleanup with Dawn should be sufficient, but you can get some alcohol and rub it real good and clean inside your steel parts, and try to get all the manufacturing oils out that you can. And if you do want to run some alcohol through it, or use some isopropyl to help rinse it, all evaporates. So it's not like you're drinking isopropyl, which you do anyway in some of your heads and foreshots. But clean it up real well with that, and you should be pretty good to go. But yeah, doing a pound and a half of sugar to a gallon of water, heat it up, get it pretty hot, 160, 70 degrees, and then add your cornmeal to it, stir it in real good, just let it sit and cool. And then once it's cool, you can, add your yeast, take your yeast, your active dry yeast, and add that to some water that's probably about 95 to 100 degrees, somewhere in there. Maybe if you put your finger under the tap, and you're using tap water, or whatever water you're using. If you got a thermometer, use it. If not, a good way to tell is if water feels cool to the touch, that means it's lower than 98. If water doesn't feel hot or cool, then it's pretty close to 98. But if it feels warm to you, then it's over 98, right? When you hold your finger under there. So if you feel something that's pretty neutral to your hand, it doesn't feel hot or cold, you're within a tolerable limits of 98 degrees, and you can fill you up about half a jar, and then take, maybe a third of a cup or a big tablespoonful of sugar and put in there and dissolve and shake it up real well. And then add your yeast in there and shake it up real well. And then take the lid off. Don't leave that lid on or it could blow, because that stuff will start foaming up. Put it in a big bowl. That way, if it foams over, you can still just dump it out of the bowl into your fermenter, and you won't have nothing to worry about. It might make a little bit of mess in the bowl, but it's pretty easy. Get your spatula and just clean it up and get it all into the fermenter. But yeah, but that tells you if your yeast is good and active, and it activates your yeast. So definitely can use the Fleischmann's, or which I recommend. Fleischmann's actually used to be a distiller's yeast, and it works perfectly well. But once you get started and once you start doing other things, you're going to want to change your yeast and try different brandy yeast for fruits, and wine yeast and champagne yeast, and try different yeast for different flavor profiles. But just getting started, absolutely nothing wrong with the Fleischmann's bread yeast. I used it for decades, and it's fine. It does give a unique flavor and a unique taste. Nothing bad, but some people prefer other yeast over that. And after you get a few runs under your belt, you can start experimenting with yeast, and maybe try Alvin EC1118 or a Red Star Deity yeast is great too if you plan on doing a lot of grains. But if you're going to do wines and you want to kind of experiment with meads and other things, there's a lot of different yeasts that are specifically designed and tuned and acclimated for those types of fermentations. Tequila has a blue agave or blue yeast that works great with the blue agave, and it's awesome. There's certain rum yeasts that work well, with the brown sugar and blackstrap or molasses that you want to use. They work well with that, getting some of those unfermentable sugars to be more fermentable. There's certain enzymes that they include in it to make that better. So there's a lot of specific yeast that will help. But absolutely nothing wrong with starting out with bread yeast. It works perfectly fine. It'll make a perfectly good product. Now, inverting my sucrose, yeah, absolutely. And was wondering if the time is worth it. Yeah. It depends, if it depends on what your time's worth to you. If I know Phil Billy gets great deals on dextrose, and if you don't have to have it shipped, if you can get to him and pick it up, he can get you some great deals on dextrose. Generally, dextrose is about twice as much as a good quality sugar, right? And it's a monosaccharide, so it's already pretty much inverted. It's not inverted sugar, but it's a monosaccharide already. It's just a single glucose molecule. Sucrose, of course, is a fructose and glucose bound together, and by inverting it, we break that glycosidic bond, and we get a free glucose molecule and a free fructose molecule, and it's actually sweeter than the sugar. But there are risks involved. If you go a little bit too far with it and you get the Maillard effect, then it'll actually start caramelizing on you and getting darker, and it makes it a polysaccharide or an oligosaccharide. So it gets more complex and unfermentable if you do that. So if most of the people that do that, it's fine to do it. You got to get it like 236.7 degrees, maybe 240. I can't remember. Shit. I think it's 230, 240. Let me see. But you want to mix in a little acid that helps you break the bond, and it is 237. Yeah, 237 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, I thought it was. But yeah, 237. So you want to get it to 237 degrees. Yeah, there you go. And then you cook off a lot of your water will cook off, and you want to get one of these little silicone brushes that they, you know, you can put barbecue sauce on and all this. Get a silicone brush and a little glass of water next to you, and as you stir this, a lot of times the liquid will get up on the bowl a little bit where you stir it, and it'll get up on there. You need to keep that down, because if what happens is, once it start, if it crystallizes, it'll spread, and you'll not be able to store this at all. It'll all just turn to crystal, kind of like a like, I guess, a honey does. So you just dip that little silicone brush in there, and you just kind of wash around the edges of the pan every time you have to stir it, and make sure that it doesn't get up on there and dry out and crystallize on you and cool off and crystallize, because it will definitely it spreads. It's amazing to watch. You know, it's not good, but once it starts, it'll spread. You got to hold it at 237 and cook off all the waters, and then and then let it cool. Yeah, but you'll be able to tell when all the water is boiled off. It'll look different, act different. It won't be splattery. You know, you'll get some bubbles still, but it'll thicken, and you won't get, you know, you'll notice a difference in it when you get all the water. Basically, that's all you're doing. You're just cooking the water off. You don't start with a lot of water to begin with. But yeah, and follow the recipe, the one that, you know, uses citric acid or lemon juice, and the acidity helps in breaking the bond and making it happen quicker. But you definitely don't want to get the Maillard effect and have it, you know, turn, you know, brown on you and actually become more complex. But I used to do it a lot. I inverted a lot of sugar back in the day, and I'm lazy. I just use glucose because I'm lazy. That's it's easy. That's why. But it is, you know, it's, if you'd like buy it on Amazon or commercially, it's twice as much. If you go to Phil Billy, or if you have a local somewhere where you can get it cheap locally, it's about $2 a pound retail, which is expensive. But that's also using, you know, as $1 a pound for a good cane sugar instead of a beet sugar. Um, but if you get it through a wholesaler, you know, you can get it considerably cheaper, or through Phil Billy if you don't have to ship it. He can get it to you a lot cheaper, but once you include the, you know, the shipping, it's a big 50-pound bag. It don't ship cheap. So, you know, you can find, you know, if you can find somebody locally that wholesales it, got a Webstront or a Restaurant Depot or something like that close by that'll sell it to you, you might definitely get a better price. Or if you're close enough to Phil, give him a call, make sure he has it in stock, and he can get it for you, and definitely cheaper, you know. Oh, I missed something here. I sure did. But I hate to hear that, man. I saw something Patty said, and I'm like, whoa, gotten on a roll here and missing that. Brother, I hate that, man. And I know pets are sometimes closer than family members, you know. You get attached to them. Nothing hurts worse than losing a loved fur baby. I appreciate you, brother. Prayers going up for you and your animal, man. Them dogs are hard to lose, man. I love dogs. Did 40 pounds of white corn, 10 pounds of golden oats, 45 gallons of water. Okay, let's see, 50 to 40. That's awesome, bro. Yep. Now what we got to do, Joe, is we got to eliminate using most of that dextrose. We got to start using enzymes. That's what we're going to do next. We're going to start with twice as much corn, and We're about 100 pounds, 45 gallons. So we'll go with about 90 gallons or 90 pounds of grains. Now that can be corn and oats and barley and whatever wheat, whatever you want to use, rye. But using about 2.25 pounds per gallon, and those enzymes or a malted grain, which I would still use the enzymes. That'll be your next step up, bro. But yeah, that's perfect. And that's how fast it will work out. If it's got the right temperature, you got the right pH, you got all your bases checked, it can go smooth and it can be great. But just one little thing get off kilter and that yeast starts stressing and it just snowballs, man. Things get worse and worse. And, acids start to build up. Next thing you know, you got a lacto infection, which, some people consider good. It can be a headache. You can get, butyric acid, which smells like vomit, which you got to deal with and kind of wait. And if that's kind of worst case scenario when that happens, but it does happen. But yeah, when things are just right, 3-4 days, man, most commercial distilleries are ready to run. And in 2.5 days, and let it sit for another day and kind of drop and clear. Yeah, I mean that's in perfect line, and it doesn't take long, especially with grains. Now, doing fruits and yeast, with that require a little lower temperature, you're definitely going to extend the time, and you want to. You definitely want a longer fermentation time with your fruits. Better things happen, but with grains, quick ain't bad. But with some of your fruits, you definitely want to do a lower temperature. That's kind of how I messed up my watermelon, letting it get way too hot and fermented really quickly, and it was way too hot, and it wasn't good. It had a lot of congeners. It just wasn't a good thing. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Those yeast love it, man. And a glucose molecule, even, they prefer that over a fructose. A fructose takes them a little bit longer, to digest than a glucose. So yeah, it definitely helps for sure. There ain't no stupid questions. Hawaiian punch wine had the double yeast because it has potassium. Yeah, but the metabisulfate or sometimes potassium sorbate. And the potassium sorbate basically just neuters the yeast where they can't breed and reproduce. So you have to keep adding it to finish it off. Whereas potassium metabisulfate just kills yeast. So you continually have to add that because it dies. So it's hard to say which one it had, but yeah, that's an issue with dealing with preservatives. It's completed but too sugary. Um, yeah, if you treat it with potassium metabisulfates, yeah, you can gas it off. Stir it up, let it sit overnight, stir it up again, let it sit overnight, and it should have gassed off most of your potassium metabisulfates, and you can get it restarted for sure. But always though, when you try to get it, try to get that Welch's 100% juice or the store generic equivalent that's 100%, or look on the back of it and see what. A lot of times, I'm trying to think of sodium stearate or something like that'll be all it has in it, and that's not as bad as the potassium sorbate. And the potassium sorbate is not as bad as the potassium metabisulfate. So, in that order, you know, 55-gallon fermenter and 5 gallons of blackstrap. Um, I would just, if you ever just make you like a sweet mash, that's what they call it, sweet feed. Mix it with your corn and make your own sweet feed. A lot of people like that. The molasses adds a rum, kind of a rummy, grungy, note to it. So, it's great for rums if you just want to, use that and maybe some brown sugar to help, sweeten it up. But 5 gallons won't be enough to do the 55. So you'll have to add some sugar to it and brown sugars. And just use your hydrometer. Just start out with maybe 20 gallons of really hot water and add that blackstrap into it and dissolve it in real good. And then And then you can make syrups. Generally just heat up water and do a pound and a half or 2 pounds per gallon, and make a syrup out of it. You could probably even go almost 3 pounds per gallon, since you're not going to use it directly, and just keep adding it and stirring it in, adding it and stirring it in till you get the right gravity. And then, if you don't have enough, then you can start adding equal parts water to syrup to bring up your volume, but maintain the same gravity. That's one of the big important things of having that hydrometer. And you can make your own recipes, and you know exactly how much fruit and sugar that you're going to need, and you can add it accordingly, and you know and get a pretty good starting gravity and a good result. And that takes all the guesswork out of it. You know what you've got started. The only guesswork at that point would be, are the sugars that are fermentable or not. So if you've converted, it's, you don't know. But if it's like just sugar or dextrose, you know that that's 100% fermentable sugars, right? What's going on, Mikey? Good to see you, brother. Hope things have mellowed out in your world. I think last week you was telling us how busy you've been and how many things you had going on. So hopefully everything's going well, brother. What's going on, Keith? How important is it to use all copper or brass fittings? I have a couple on my steel that are steel. Yeah, you don't want to have anything that's carbon steel, or anything that can rust on there. It's definitely an issue. Iron is a problem with fermentation. Can cause definitely some off flavors. If you know, every distillery, before they ever located, back in the old days, before they just used city water that was heavily filtered like most of them do now, always located in a place that had a spring. That's one of the reasons Kentucky had so many places that located here. We've got more running water than any state in the union except Alaska. So any of the continental U.S. states, we have the most running water. And we had a lot of springs that had high calcium and hard water with a lot of calcium from the limestone, right? The only issue was some of those springs had a lot of iron in them, so they would have to test them all to find the ones that had no iron. And that was very imperative back in then, and it is still now. Iron prohibits calcium uptake in the actual fermentation process. It stresses yeast and it adds bad flavors. So, as far as danger wise, I don't think it's going to be like back in the old days when they used oil drums that were rusty old galvanized and iron radiators. Remember those old radiators that people would use in their houses for heat, steam heat, and hot water heat pumped through them? Well, I mean, they use those for condensers a lot, and that was like the worst ever. So you can get toxins from these metals. As far as the galvanized fitting, it's probably not going to be as bad, but yeah, I would definitely replace it with a brass or stainless. If it's a stainless steel, that's fine. If copper is going to be expensive, but brass is fine. A lot of people, lead, brass got lead. Every fixture in your house has brass. It's it might be brass plated, but over, I guess, in the mid 90s, they raised the standards on all the brass, and I think again in the early 2000s. And newer brass fittings have virtually zilch. You'll get more mercury or lead from eating a can of tuna than you're going to get from drinking out of that faucet. So it's not a big issue anymore. If you live in a house that was built in the 60s or 70s or earlier, then you might have concern. You may have galvanized pipes, and you may have lead, solder. If you don't, if you have copper, it might have the old lead solder. Then that might be a bit of a concern, but it's not a big issue anymore with the brass. But I would replace it, definitely. Yeah, you can add blackstrap to your corn mash. Sure can. It makes sweet feeds. It's basically just making your own sweet feed. I didn't see how many pounds, but that's awesome. Now I remember we talked about it because I was wondering how much with each eye of the tomato, the potato that you cut off. I've never grown them, but I was about to. I had a few potatoes that had some eyes, and I cut them off, and I was just curious. But I don't have the property to do it. But you can bet your ass if I had a farm or acreage, I'd be tilling up a big bit and putting me in a garden like I used to. But I'm in the city on a smaller 3rd acre lot, and my backyard has a pool in it and ain't much grass, so there ain't much room for putting in a garden. But I do have a bunch of pots. I got like 16 tomatoes in buckets, and about right now about 5 pepper plants. But I gotta get me some more peppers. I gotta find me some um, jalapenos, and some of the what they call poblanos. I got them. I like them. I got them last year, and those are good. Yeah, I got you. That's good. That's what's fishing and frog gigging. That's what she's busy doing. I got you, bro. Well, growing weeds, it could be a good thing too. Depending on which weed you're growing, right? As long as it's permitted in your state, of course. I would never condone anything illegal on here. No, no, no. Yeah, he's got to know which ones to pull and which ones to leave. That's the toughie when they first come up and everything comes up at the same time. You're scratching your head, well, which is the plant and which is the weed, They're all coming in at the same time. But I did get a late start this year because we had some late frosts. We had frosts in the May, mid May. So it was a really late start for me this year, and a lot of the people didn't get real good that didn't have greenhouses didn't get good starts this year either. So yeah, it's a little later than I'd want, but I'm hoping to get some. There's a greenhouse that grows some around here, and I don't mind paying a little bit more for a medium pot that's already got some flowers or maybe even some small peppers on it because it is a late start for me and for here. Uh, but I gotta have me some jalapenos, man, and some poblanos. Those are so good. We make salsa, and I think I got like 16, 15, 16 tomato plants and 5, I think, peppers at the time. And I need to get at least 8 to 10 more peppers, poblanos, and jalapenos. That's about as hot as I get jalapeno. Nah, once it gets to 0.999, uh, it's pretty much done. You can wait and let things settle. If you still got some cap remnants, you can scrape some of that off if you want to and just pitch it, or wait until it drops fully. I've done both, but I do like to let it sit and clear a little bit. But the longer you wait, the more chances are that you're going to get a lacto or some calm yeast or something like that. Kind of um, coat the surface with a white looking scariness that makes you think, oh my God, it's ruined. But, um, but yeah, anytime it's at 0.99, you know that the sugars have pretty much all been consumed and you should be good to go. Skim it off, let it settle, and rack it off. I don't pump it out. I don't want to disturb anything. So I just siphon it off, racking it off. I just lift it up higher and siphon it from that into a bucket lower. And I got like a 1 inch silicone tube that I use it's intended for winemaking. And I just siphon it all off, and and then I'll leave the yeast bed in the bottom with whatever liquids in there. And if I want to, I can get a separate bucket, put a brew bag over the top of the bucket, kind of lift it, put it in the bottom, but lift the sides up and over, dump it in there and pull the bag up. And I used to sit it under a ladder and let it sit overnight and drip. That worked pretty well. But I got me one of those mop wringers from Walmart, and I can put that brew bag in there and wring it out and get most of the liquid out that I need. I mean, it beyond that, it just gets for what, a pint more of juice. It's just not worth the time and trouble. And then you can take those solids and dump it into your next run, and get some back set, and dump it in there with it and start your sour mash, right? With a little bit of fresh grains every time. Make sure you add some fresh grains to that, though. 50 pounds of yellow dent corn. I would go with 50 pounds of yellow dent, and I would go with 23 to 25 gallons of water, and convert it, and you should be good to go. Gelatinize it like we talk about. You gotta heat it up and hold that temperature. That temperature has to be held at 185 to 90 plus. The hotter the better, but it's hard to get hotter longer like that. But for 90 minutes, hour and a half. And once you do that, it should be fully gelatinized, and add your alpha amylase, stir it in good, and it'll get liquidy on you, and you'll know it's working because it'll get liquidy in no time. And let it sit. And then on the glucoamylase package, some of it will say 140, some will say 120, some will say 100, some will say 90. So just go on whatever temperature your package says, because it'll have different enzyme formulas in there that may be combination enzymes that can denature at higher temperatures. So, but add it at whatever temperature they require and just let it sit. And you should get a pretty good conversion if your amylase is effective and you gelatinized it pretty well. And then you won't need to add any sugar. You'll get a 1060 or 1070 from just the sugars from the corn itself. So I would start with about 23 gallons of water. That way you get a little bit more over 2 pounds per gallon, and you'll ensure yourself of getting a little bit higher sugar conversion, getting more sugars to convert out of it. 2 pounds per gallon will do fine. If you got the good amylase and you do everything just right, you should get that 1060, 1065, no problem. But if you do the 2.25 pounds per gallon, then maybe 23 or 22, then you'll get 20 would be 2.5 pounds. So in between that would give you the 2.25. So 20 would be 2.5. 25 would be 2. So 22.5 gallons or 23, would be fine. And like I say, get about 20 gallons going, boiling, just a rolling boil, and add that to your corn, and then get about 2.5 gallons more rolling boil, and just add it slowly to that corn while it gelatinizes it, and maintain that 185. Do it in a cooler or something insulated, and trying to maintain that hot temperature. But if you get a good conversion, you get a good gelatinization, and then your enzymes are fresh and effective, then you will get a good conversion for sure. Oh, talking about dextrose, well, grains for that matter. Talked to a local brewery. We had a local brew shop supply store. It's actually a brewery. Great prices. Fixed 50 pounds of dextrose runs 90. That's about average. It's about 2 pounds, $2 a pound. I can get it on Amazon for 90 plus free shipping, 90 to 100, depending, the price varies. So it's about 90 to 100 on Amazon. But I think Phil can, I'm not going to quote a price, but I know he can get it significantly less than that. Not half, but I'm going to guess. I think last time I heard it was like 150, instead of 200 instead of 100 for 50 pounds, it was like 60, 70 or something like that. That's quite a bit less. But shipping, and if you ask to ship it, it's just going to be about as cheap getting it, there at your brew store. So it is expensive to ship 50-pound bags. Yeah, I think he was getting it for 60, $70, which is, save you 30 bucks for sure. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that, man. I'd forgotten all about it, Stephen. I appreciate you, brother. Hey, no problem, Brian. Anytime you got a question, man, jump on here and ask. And there, there's no bad questions, and you probably have a lot of the same questions other people have, and in general, people have the same questions. There's certain things that you need to know, and you know, and we try to cover all the bases. I try to explain things with bringing in all different angles so you can kind of get an idea of why we say it, not just here it's 2.5 pounds per gallon and that's it, not why or whatever, you know. So I like to let people know why, because that's what I was always curious about is, well, why? That's the answer, but why is that the answer? Why is it that time or that temperature? All right, let me get the rest of these links out if they'll let me. Man, I appreciate that. I would forget my head if it wasn't attached. I would definitely forget. I love having new people in here and others that aren't so new asking questions, man, because the questions you ask, you're not just answering it for yourself. There's a lot of people out there that that are curious and have the same questions but they're afraid to ask. They just sit and listen and hopefully hopefully they'll ask the question that I have, and like I say every time, if that's the case, make a fake YouTube account, create a fake email address, or it just doesn't have to be fake email address, just a new one that doesn't use your name, and ask anonymously if it makes you feel better. Because I understand, there are some people that have concerns, and those are legitimate concerns, especially in certain areas that have ALE. Any state that has ALE, you really have to watch out. And nothing against ALE. That's their job. That's what they do. They enforce alcohol laws, and they have nothing better to do. That's what their whole job description is. So that's pretty much what they do. That's their thing. Most states don't have that. So a lot of the policemen have better things to do these days, especially than looking for somebody in their house making a little beer, wine, and moonshine. There's definitely a lot of things going on in our world these days that we don't talk about on here, but there's a lot of bad things going on that hopefully, well, I got them all shared. That's good. That's relief. I wish I could do them all at once, though, so everybody could have. Some people think this show starts at 9 because it doesn't get posted to their group till 9. Hopefully, they're seeing it pop up in some of the other groups. Most of the people that are in the groups, they're a member of like 5 or 6 groups. And if you are a member of a distilling or moonshine group on Facebook and this doesn't get shared to it, let me know and I'll look it up and I'll talk to the admins and see if it's okay, and I'll start sharing it there as well. So if you have a favorite group and it's isn't shared in it, send me a note and or talk to your admins and see if it's cool, and if so, I'd be happy to share it to them. Have a random question that will probably go nowhere. Okay. Have you ever considered mashing popcorn instead of sweet corn? People do all the time. Yeah, I haven't bought popcorn specifically for that, but popcorn works just fine. There's a lot of people that do. It's just a different type of, variety of corn. It works fine. Probably going to be a little bit different. It's probably not going to have as much starches as like a field corn. and it's not going to be as sweet as the sweet corn. So it's going to kind of fall somewhere in between those two, and maybe not be as good. But I've heard a lot of people doing it. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. Smaller kernels, a little bit smaller than your average kernel. But yeah, a lot of people have done popcorn. It's expensive. It's not something that I've sought out or sought to do, but a lot of people like doing unique things, and I'm more of a traditionalist. I don't really stray from. I probably should experiment more, but maybe now that I'm retired, I'll be able to find time to do some different unique things like that. But yeah, it's perfectly fine to do popcorn. For 4 1-gallon cans of peaches and light syrup. I was thinking about putting that on with your corn. Yeah, I mean a peach and corn makes a good combination. You can add some oats with that as well, and you can use some brown sugar. If that light syrup isn't enough, um, and get some pretty good combination there. It's a mountain brandy or a split brandy. I always call it a mountain brandy. Um, Different names. We always consider the split brandy with several different fruits. Um, but some people call it mountain brandy where it has grain and fruit, split brandy. So I guess it's just whatever it was called locally. Different people call it different things. But mountain brandy, with the fruit and the grain, a lot of people do it. It's perfectly fine. And, corn flavor and peach flavor would be something complementary that would work well together. Rye works well. A lot of people like a peach rye and an apple rye, because the spiciness of the rye goes with the sweetness pretty well. So, but um, yeah, you could. I would just ferment it all together. Corn and all. Just put everything together. If you want to try to convert your corn first and get a good conversion, and then if you can start adding your cans of peaches to that, and if it sweetens it up a little bit, you can add some water, or you can you know do that. Just use your hydrometer, to get where you want to be, and then just ferment it all together. And that way your grains, and I would add a little bit of a nutrient in there because really corn doesn't have much nitrogen, has enough almost for itself. It's to the point where most people don't use a nutrient when just doing just corn, but you actually could. It's probably 80% efficient, where it probably could use about 20% of a nutrient, not a whole lot, but a little bit to help it along. Um, but if you do add a substantial amount of peaches, maybe a little bit, maybe a third of what your nutrient calls for, add about a third of that. And you could step feed it as well, which is a lot of people are doing these days, and not adding any nutrient right off the bat. And on day 2 and 4, add some more and step feed it. Use half on 2 and half on 4. That works well too. Or you could let them both ferment out and combine them. That works well too. That's fine. That works just fine. Either way. You done? Yeah. A lot of people done popcorn. I just never, it's I'm cheap. I haven't done a lot of heirlooms. I've done a few heirlooms, but I haven't done. I know pretty much that Yellow Dent does pretty damn good. The best whiskeys and bourbons in the world were made with Yellow Dent corn. You can't, kind of hard to go against that. So, but it is fun to kind of get some heirlooms and some of your reds and your. Um, I haven't tried the Oaxacan. I want to try the Oaxacan, and the Argentine orange are a couple of that I haven't tried. But like your Jimmy Reds and your High Blues and all those great unique flavors, and a little bit different than regular corn will give you. But after it comes out of a barrel, you probably may, if you're side by side testing, not be able to taste a difference between a Yellow Dent and a Hopi, Jimmy Red, or whatever, Ohio Blue, Jimmy Red combo. Um, but they'll both taste good. They'll be unique, and you won't be able to. Some people pick one and pick the other for their favorite, so it'd be really tough. But I'm stuck on using that old cheap yellow dent and getting pretty good results and getting good. I tend to try to do different percentages. I like adding wheat and oats and barley, not as much rye, but my guy that's got all of the wheat is now doing rye this year, so I'm going to be doing more rye. That'll be interesting. That'll work, brother. No, I haven't done rice and corn. I've done, maybe I have. I've done a little with rice, and I'm going to do more. I've got this yellow label angel yeast, and it will supposedly convert for you, so you don't have to do any gelatinization and all that. And it's a Gobi, and it's got I think it was designed for rice. That's right. That's right. I'm just cheap, I just hate the thought of spending, $100 on a bag of corn that I can get for $7, right? And I do know that there's a difference in flavor. Is it $93 different? I don't know. That's after it comes out of a barrel, after it's been aged. Some people will say, "Oh, that's great," and it's better. Is it that much better though? And after it's been in a barrel for 3 or 4 years, it's going to be taking a pretty good taster to taste the difference. Now you may be able to taste the difference, but once you say, okay, well this barrel, 53-gallon barrel costs several $1,000s in heirloom corn. This one costed, maybe a few hundred. Is it worth 3,000 more? No, I mean that cheaper barrel, right? Makes it sweeter. It could very well. It's highly starchy, and it, crack it, break it, and grind it, and convert it just the same, as you do your corn. But yeah, so does wheat, for that matter. Wheat will make it sweeter. Especially get a good malted wheat. Definitely add a grassy sweetness to it. It's good. I like wheat. I like wheated whiskey, bourbons. I like that sweet that it adds. It is Saturday. Nobody calling shots. And I forgot to proof down that 140. I'm gonna have to drink something else. I can't deal with that 140, man. It's been scratching my throat every damn night. I drink it. I got to proof it down. I could probably mix it with this. It's 100. Yeah, it's a lot better. I could probably mix those two together and get about 120 out of it. Tannic acid. Yeah, I mean, you're always going to have organic acids in the fermentation process, and that's actually a good thing. You just don't want certain ones, to build up in high percentages, like a lactic acid or a butyric acid. There's a lot of different acids that'll form them. But yeah, that's not going to be an issue. Yeah, I like the creaminess, buttery, especially like with that peach and corn, that'll give you kind of a peach cobbler kind of effect. That creaminess will kind of replace that crust that you get in the cobbler, right? So it's always good to add a little oats if you're going for that cobbler, milky, creamy, to add to the fruit flavor. It makes it good. Oats, just 10%, be plenty. Yeah. I always just throw a few handfuls in, so I don't do a percent. And a lot of times I don't even really include it in the grain bill or the weight. I'll just throw a few handfuls in there, or half a box, just to, just to soften it up some. But if you do, use a lot of these grains, like a lot of wheat or a lot of barley, a lot of rye, any of these grains that have a lot of gluten, we talk about this. It can, instead of gelatinizing, you get a real gummy, right? It's just kind of a clear, gummy, gooey, slimy. Everybody describes it a little bit different, but it's a different consistency, and it's a little tougher to work with, kind of like the gelatinized corn. So there are some enzymes that will help break those down. Beta glucanase. So if you're not using malts, you can get some beta glucanase or some Seb Flow or Visco Seb that will help break those down. Hello, Miss Marie. How are you? Hope you're feeling better. Yeah, we had a lot of rain too. It has been pouring. We got it yesterday and last night. There was lightning and a lot of water in the cat bowls out there. I mean, they were full, which tells me we got a lot of rain last night. Probably half inch to an inch of rain over the whole night. I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but we got quite a bit. But I hope you're feeling better. And it's good to get your test results back. At least you know what's going on now, and you don't have the worries that it's not the worst it could have been, right? It's oats, probably around 140. Let me pull up my handy dandy chart. I'm thinking around 140. Let's see. Yeah. I've got all these charts on the Moonshine Militia and in DIY Shine and Steel Building page. So if y'all want to check these charts out, you can find them both. And if you want me to send you one, send me a message in Facebook and I can shoot them to you in Messenger. But let's see where oats fall in here. Let me get this chat out of the way. Oats is about 145, about 145 is the high end there where you see about 147 and a half actually. So yeah, anywhere 140, 45 would be fine. Yeah. And most of these you'll see along that right in the middle of that at 150, 145 to 50 in the left of that saccharification test range, rest range. You'll see a lot of what we had. Wheat kind of falls in there, rye a little bit less. Oats, rice, of course, go in a lot higher. But potatoes fall right in there, barley a little bit less, but malted barley is right in that range right there, That's a great little chart to have on your phone. Anytime you need it, boom, it'll be there. But 100, most of the adjunct grains, can go in between 145, 50-ish and not really ruin them. If it's a malted grain, then you definitely want to consult and find the temperature that will denature those enzymes. And that's just a Google. You can Google what I've got a malted wheat. What's the temperature of? Let's just do it. Malted wheat, male to the denature temp. And AI tells me 158, which is about right, 155. Yeah, temp is good. Yeah, typical optimal mashing to keep enzymes active and convert starches to sugar mash between 147 to 50, 156. And that's why I say 145, 55. So that's definitely right in the range for sure. But if you notice, back in the days when we powdered alpha amylase, and when you add your malted barley, 155, that's pretty much the temperature, the upper temperature. you any a little bit more than that will start it to denature. So 150 to 55 is that range that you wanted to get in with your alpha to get it fully active, because you want to get it as hot as it can get before it denatures, right? So you don't want to go to the denaturing temp, but you want to get it right before that. That way it's the most active and will be most effective. That's its effectiveness. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I always use the enzymes now too. I still throw some of that powdered in there because I'm too cheap, and I feel I might get a little bit good. So when it gets to 155, I'll throw a pinch in there, half what it calls for. Even when I'm using the liquid, it's just because I hate just throwing the rest of that bag away. Um, just just the thought of it being so wasteful like that. But it does suck, and it's nowhere near as effective as the liquid. But my liquid, some of it's getting a little bit older, so maybe adding some of that with it will kind of help, and they can kind of work together. But I get them pretty good conversion, so 20 malted is great, especially if it's 6 row. 20% of a 2 row might not be enough, but if you're using the liquid enzymes along with it, you don't even worry about it. If it's malted and done well, just use half of, well, I use full strength with the alpha just so I can thin it down. But when it comes to the gluco at the end, you don't necessarily have to use the full amount. You can save on it a little bit and use half what it normally would if you're using a 20%. 20% of your grain bill is a malted barley or malted wheat. Malted wheat contains a higher diastatic than 6 row barley. So if it's malted properly, both malted properly. So it can have actually a little higher diastatic than just the malted barley. But I'm always going to use the liquids, just to help things along. I may not use them in the full strength that I would if I didn't have a malt, but yeah. Hey, I don't know, Joe. I'm getting old, brother. I'm getting forgetful, man. Oh, it's getting bad. I'm getting forgetful. But that's one good thing about having notes that I've written in the past and the internet. A lot of times if I can't remember everything. I wish I used to remember just about everything. I had a really good memory when I was younger, but absolutely, Joe. Absolutely, brother. Anybody on here, if you want to friend me up on Facebook, just shoot me a note. Tell me you're from the podcast. I'll add you. You can ask questions, shoot me a question anytime. I may not be able to answer it immediately. I have odd hours of sleeping, and sometimes don't even have my phone with me, and I don't see them. Sometimes I don't see the message until I go to send the message to you, and it's like, well, damn, I'm sending that message. He sent me a message a week ago, and I didn't even see it. It didn't even pop up. So, but yeah, I'll always answer questions. In fact, I'm getting one right now. Oh, it's my buddy talking about making Maggie. He's hoping to. But you better be there, Warren. Yep. Hope they can make it. Oh, trying to remove that. In fact, I'll shoot you one, Joe. Let's see what. Well, helps us build Boyd OYD. Just sent it to you, brother. Yeah, yeah, it's fine, man. You can shoot them to me. I understand, and you can actually on DIY shine and steel building. Now you can on the militia, I don't think, but on DIY shine and steel building, there is an option to post anonymously, ask your questions anonymously, and the only people that will see that are the admins, and that would be me and Eric Ayers, and we're both cool. So you won't have anything to worry about. If you want to post questions in there anonymously, feel free to. And I'll answer them the same. If I know it's you or anonymous, I'll answer them all the same. I try to, you know, treat everybody equally. But if you want to join DIY Shine and Steel Building and ask in there, I think when you ask the question, I don't know because I'm looking at the site from the admin side. But I think when you post, it gives you the option to check anonymous, post anonymously, and feel free to do that if you want to. Yeah. Otherwise, message me anytime, brother. Day or night, 24/7. I keep odd hours, so if it's like between 6 in the morning and 11, I might be asleep, or I may have just woke up and be having a cup of coffee. You never know. I understand. Yep, I understand perfectly, brother. And there's people that don't have a certain level of paranoia. You probably should. You got to respect it. And I know getting out of here and doing what I do definitely puts me kind of in the spotlight, and but um, at this point in my life, I do so little. It's nothing compared to what I used to do. So, statute of limitations is gone, so I can sleep a little easier at night. And I'm pretty sure they got a lot better things to do than mess with old Santa. And we don't have ALA here, and they're pretty lenient here. I better not say that too much. Lenient, huh? But yeah, they got a lot more things to worry about. I'm not selling or hurting anybody, you know. And it doesn't leave my home. I used to take it to festivals and stuff with me, but that's interstate, man. That becomes federal when you go take it from one state to the next. So if I took it from here to North Carolina where they have LA, ALE, be risky. So I don't take it to out of state anymore. But if you're at Beattyville, you definitely might have a little bit. Or in state, they've got this moonshine. Another one going on in Land Between the Lakes in October. I think we posted, and there's the Moonshiners Ball that's the same weekend that going on in South Central Kentucky. So I may hit one of those. I can't hit them both the same weekend. But that Moonshiners Ball, man, it's got a lot of music, a lot of good bluegrass music too. So I like that. I like that old bluegrass music. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It feels busy. Yeah, yeah. Send them to me. Yeah, if you got questions, just ask me. Unless it's about building or making an SCR or doing something like that, and then ask Phil. Yeah, yeah, Uncle Al, man, they different. When you got ALA in your state, you definitely. I remember that. You definitely have to walk on eggshells, and they watch. So if you're in the Carolinas and stuff, definitely post anonymously and and create that anonymous question there and all those things because any state that has ALE, it's a good question. I wonder what states have ALE. All right, all states have ABC, alcohol and tobacco. We know that. That's different. That enforces licensing and regulations and all those things. ALE, a little different. So it's not giving me a straight answer. So they all have alcohol regulatory agencies, right? But I'm asking ALE. So I guess each of them have, different regulatory. So, but I know that ALE is a little more alcohol law enforcement. So they have less to do. Alcohol beverage, they're more concerned with are all these commercial places paying their fair tax, keeping their paperwork straight. Are they selling under the table? Moonshining and bootlegging is not the big thing that it was at one point in time back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. It's and now that they've become more lax, with marijuana, they've become more lax. There's states that allow distilling now at home. So it's definitely become more lax. So not quite as strict as they used to be on it, but some states are still. So North Carolina is kind of unique with the ALE. I thought there's other states that had it. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, that's just they're doing their job, and it's our job to keep things under the hat and not not draw the heat on us. A lot of people talk about selling on Facebook and give what they got available and things like that. I mean, that's pretty damn ballsy. I gotta say that's pretty ballsy. I would never dream of that. Yeah, North Carolina is that's pretty much the only state that has the ALE. That's pretty much that's it. That's all they got. That's what they do. What's going on, Frank? Good to see you, brother. You tardy. Been busy, I know. Of every brew pot. Are you talking about the Bever brew pot that looks like that? Or the Bever brew pot? Damn it. Oh my goodness. I know I've got pictures of a 3-pot Bever. There. Or does it look more like that? What's going on, Matt? How's it going, brother? You pretty close to my old stopping grounds. I grew up in Eastern Kentucky in Pike County, so you right across the border. Yeah, you got to watch the ALE, man. So be careful. Yeah, we just got to try to fly under the radar, man. It's not like either one of those. So it's just a standard pot for cooking. I've not, but I would really like to. I know it's towards the end of the season, so it's kind of a great time to go. It's a little cooler there. I know Jay and Amanda talked about going a couple of years ago. I don't know if they made it, but I know they're wanting to go as well. I would love to make it out there for it. Sounds like a great time. Um, Sparges grain heats up to 213. Cool. Let me see. I don't know. I don't think I have a picture of one of these. Let me Google this. Let's see if it's what do they call it? Digiboil. They look like one of these. Oh, well, actually, that's probably it. Let me get a screenshot of that. Well, shit. All right. Oh, really? Not going to let me screenshot that? I bet you will. Trying to block me screenshot. Can you imagine that? All right. Does it look like this? That's just like a digiboil. And that's actually for making beer. And there's also a lid that you can get. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, this is like a digiboil. In fact, it's probably made by the same company in China that makes digiboils. Um, they're great. Yeah, they're for making beer. They make an extension to put on top of this, so you can undo the top, and then you can clamp on an extension. It's just an extension tube to make it hold more. And they also make a lid for this. And there's other people that make lids for this. You can get copper lids from certain places that have a ferrule on it, so you can use it for distilling as well. There's also, and I don't recommend doing it because you probably void your warranty for sure, but there's a way to rig the heating elements so both of them heat at the same time. So you don't have low, medium, high. It's just pretty much high, ultra high, which does the low. I think there's different coils in there or something like a stove, and it does them both at the same time. Um, and it's the same thing as a digiboil. There's a T500, been around a while, but it does have the sparging tube, and it's like I talked earlier about sparging and getting all the, the small stuff off. Yeah, it's for beer makers, and it's great. They work well. I was going to get one, but my concerns were if the element went out in the bottom, would I be pretty much rendered with a useless piece, or are they interchangeable? Can you buy replacements? And that was my concern. So I just ended up getting a pot and a turkey fryer and just going with that. And I got the football where I can put that on a turkey fryer, or I can put that on the stove, or I can weld an element into, or a ferrule into the bottom of it and go electric with it if I want to. So I went with that. Be a little bit more versatile, but those are fine. And like I said, they've got a lid for them you can buy that'll clamp right on there with a ferrule on the top. Yeah, they work great. Yeah, they're great for beer making, and beer making is what you got to do to make whiskey, to make a whiskey mash. But a lot of times beer don't deal with corn, but absolutely they work great, and you can mash use them for mashing. It's perfect. And probably a little less. You can put in that false bottom, and maybe a brew bag, and worry a little less about gelatinizing your corn and scorching it and cooking it. But also make sure that you never heat it with out any liquid in there. It's definitely not going to be like a regular element, but yeah. But yeah, I looked at those. The one I looked at, I think it's for Vever had them. I don't remember ever seeing the Vever model, but it looks just a lot like the Digiboils. But you can see it's got a little false bottom. That little plate in there is a false bottom, so you can put a brew bag in there, and you don't have to worry about it getting to the element. And yeah, those work real well. And in fact, there's quite a few people that have those that love them, and a lot of them are beer makers too. So it definitely, because when you beer make, they do it opposite of what we do, right? When we start with corn, we start at high temp and work down and add our grains as we come down in temperature. Whereas in beer making, you step up, you go forward and you have rests and protein rests and saccharification rests and other, rest involved as you bring up the temperature, right? So it's kind of opposite of what we do. So you can actually, I talked to beer makers and they were always curious, can I just do my beer mash like you were talking about with fruits and corn? Can I do them separately and combine them at the end? And absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, the stainless drums are great. Perfect. Yeah, that's a good setup for sure. Just, you can get the copper mesh and, put that in your column. If as long as that column is 2 inch, or bigger, loosely pack it in there. Make sure your vapors can flow through. Make sure it's not close to the bottom where you get chunks puking up into it and maybe packing it and filling it up. Don't want to do that. But yeah, if you have a sight glass on your column, a lot of times people will have columns like this. And I say that without finding it. Second here. Try to keep all my pictures combined, but I keep downloading and screenshotting them and I forget to add them. And I got 2 different files that most of them are in. I always go to the wrong one, just like I just did. Yep. Like these columns, that would probably be a little undersized for a 50, but that's a 2 inch. But with a 52 would be my minimum. But three or four would be optimum. I would definitely run one of those 4 inch columns. Let me show you what. Get one of these off Phil Billy. He got a good deal on them. One of these. Run one of those on that 4 inch column. Hell yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's the way the beer makers do it. And that's kind of, I would definitely recommend starting high and going backwards with corn. Any other grain, beer making grain, barley and wheat and rye and all the other grains that you use to make beer, definitely step mash up. But with corn, I would always just recommend just starting at that real high temperature, gelatinizing it and being done with it. You can gelatinize at lower temperatures, but it's not as complete and it takes a long, long time. So 185, 90 for 90 minutes, 185 to 90 degree Fahrenheit for 90 will for sure, it might be a little overkill, but it'll for sure get it gelatinized. There won't be any much doubt. 4 inch, perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. That will work perfectly, brother. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, as long as you get good fresh cracked corn, it's great. But corn is kind of like coffee. Um, Using the regular beans is like cracked corn, or I'm sorry, using the ground, buying it ground and having it on the shelf for 3 months, and by the time you drink that last cup, it gets kind of stale, oxidized. Corn's a lot like that. Um, if you buy it cracked, it could be sitting for a few months. It may be 6 months, depending on when it was bought, the store it's at. I'd say in the city they probably sell less, and it stays on the shelf longer than it does in the country. So it can get kind of stale. But if you buy just the whole kernel, yellow dent #2 whole kernel from the farmer or from Tractor Supply or wherever, Rural King, you can grind it and it's good and fresh. So it'll have even better corn flavor. But yeah, that yellow dent's perfectly fine, man. It's great flavor. Especially if you want to put some cream corn and some sweet corn, grind it all up in a blender, cob and all if you want, doesn't matter. With some of that corn, it works real well with cream corn and sweet corn mixed up, or just cream corn, but blend it. Keep it all blended up, and it adds a lot of good corn flavor too. Right, right. Pint jars, fine. Coffee mugs work well. Whatever fits that height just right. I put a coffee mug in mine because I got one that fits just right in the center of that false plate, and perfectly sized, and it'll handle the heat real well too. So yeah, a jar or whatever works. Oats are good. I love adding oats, man. It makes it soft, creamy. It adds, a little soft texture to it. Um, Gives it good notes. It definitely takes some bite out. I love adding oats, man. That's like I say, sometimes I don't even consider it in the grain bill. I just throw it in there, unless I'm making wine or something with all fruit. You know, um, get some oats. Hell yeah, I don't know, man. I love eating corn. I got a bunch of it. We got it on sale. I took a bunch up to Fields for the fourth too, to cook up. But man, I'll eat corn every meal, 2 3 years every meal. I love sweet corn. For me, it's always been expensive though, right? It's so expensive. If it's free, I blanch it and freeze it and put it up, and that frozen corn. I ate some from 2 years ago before we got this fresh, and it's still just fine. Not 2 years, it was last year's, but it's a year old frozen corn, and it's just good. It's really good. So yeah, I have to. We got a little vacuum sealer. I love it. But yeah, I'd have to eat the sweet corn, man. I love it too much. But save some maybe for grinding up and putting in your thumper and infusing with that. And cream corn works real well. But if it's free and you got more than you can eat and you can't freeze and you don't have room to freeze it, yeah, hell yeah. Or if you live next to a farmer and he's done run his combine through it and says, you know, field corn or whatever, whatever's out there on the ground or whatever you can have. Man, I know shiners from back in the day. We'd be out there picking bags, so our backs broke, man, just getting that free corn. I would, man. Blanch it and put it up. We got stacks upon stacks in our freezer from last year and this year. It kills Ann when it goes on sale. She's like, oh God, I know he's gonna buy a bunch, man. I'll come home with 50, 80 years, time, and I'll get that big vever out, man. We'll get that thing boiling and do them all and get them done quick. She likes that big pot. Oh no, that's crazy, man. Because a lot of the rain we've been having has been going. I guess it's going north of you, hitting Virginia. Hopefully, y'all get some, man. We've had plenty of rain this year. I haven't had to go out and do a lot of watering on my plants yet, and I didn't have to today again. And in fact, they were a little bit stunned from getting too much. I thought I was going to have to put covers over them to keep some of the rain off of them. It's been raining so much. Hopefully, y'all get some more. But it's been. I do know that this last corn I got was inexpensive, but for the most part, the ears were small. They were much smaller than usual. But I just sat there and waited 15, 20 minutes on the lady to come by. I looked at watermelons and acted like I was looking. Well, I was waiting on her ass, and she came by with a cart and a few boxes, and people been picking the shit out of it. And of course, everybody just picks the biggest ones out, and then another person comes up, and they'll pick the biggest, and then it's just the biggest of the smallest. Then that lady came up, man. She replenished it, and I had 4 bags, and I went up there, and I think ended up dumping 3 of my bags out because the shit that she putting out there a lot bigger than what I had. And I get about a dozen in each bag, and I had 4 or 5 bags, so that's about 60 years. Yeah, yeah. Wow, I can't believe y'all haven't been getting any, man. No, brother, we're up to our ears, literally ears in corn. If you brought corn, man, Ann would just she wouldn't like you. She would be like, she'd be giving her serious looks, be like, "Are you kidding me? I'm gonna have to cook up more corn when we get home." Oh my god, that she likes it. At first, she complained, but I guess this past fall and winter, when there was no fresh corn to be had, and we're still eating good corn that was frozen, and she realized how well it froze. Even after a year, it's still good, and she's a little bit more willing to put it up now because she's like, yeah, I guess you're right. This was a good idea, and it's good to have that. And you never know this day and time. There's so many things that can disrupt the ice storms and riots or things like that can really disrupt the supply chain. Um, COVID or whatever. There's so many things that can interrupt the supply chain that you got to be prepared. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right? But yeah, you get in trouble. She'd be looking at the side. She wouldn't be happy. I appreciate it, brother. But yeah, we got tons of corn. I got probably I've got 3 different refrigerator freezers, if that gives you any, and all of them are packed full. The freezers, I can't even get a water jug in there right now to freeze. So I'm gonna have to pull a ham out to do that. But there's stuff with hams, steaks. You got corn, bacon. That's probably mixed vegetables. That's probably how do you freeze it? The corn, we just cut it off the cob, and she cooks it on the cob, and for like what 3 minutes, babe? Yeah, 3 or 4 minutes. Cook it in the hot. Is it boiling water or just hot? Boiling water, 3 or 4 minutes. Pull it out, let it cool, and just cut it off. It's called blanching, and just cut it off, and then either put it in a Ziploc and squeeze all the air out, or vacuum seal it, and it'll freeze just fine. And vacuum sealed, you can open it up a year or two later, and it'll be just fine, man. It's like fresh and sweet as ever. Oh yeah, you seen the deals I get on these meats? It's crazy, man. I mean, I'm getting like this last week ribeyes, 10.99 a pound. This week, strip steaks, New York strips, 9.99 a pound. And I get big inch and a half cut, and we vacuum seal them. I've got T-bones, porterhouses actually that thick, inch and 3/4, inch and a half, 3/4 cut, and vacuum sealed. Same with the ribeyes. Got a bunch of those put up. Hams. Yes, sir. I feel guilty, when shit hits a fan and everybody's scratching for what little they can to eat. Because I'm going to be eating high on the hog, baby. Eating ham and steak and corn, and fresh vegetables. Well, not fresh, frozen vegetables. But yeah, I got 3 freezers full. And I need another freezer. I need another freezer. I'd like to get a big chest freezer. I need to get another one of those. I had one that was upright, and man, it just killed me. I had that thing full of walleye and deer meat and other fish, crappie and steaks and everything else, and bacon like I like to do, and hams. And one day I walked out there, and there was a puddle of blood on the floor, and I opened that thing up, and it'd been maybe weeks since we needed anything out of it, and it had gone out bad, and everything in it was ruined. And that was thousands of dollars worth of stuff, man. It hurt. It hurt bad. What's going on, Shadow? How you feeling, brother? Miss you too, man. I hope you're doing better, brother. Absolutely, family first. Well, Lord first, family second, and we'll settle for third, bro. But it's good to see you, my friend. Hey, until you are, brother, we'll be here waiting on you, man. We understand. Got to take care of family, brother. Immediate family, and then us, secondary family. Right? That's the way it's got to work. Lord first, family second, and then extended family third. But it's good to see you, man. We'll keep you in our prayers, brother. That time for me another shot. Damn it, I don't have Mark in here telling me shots, calling the shots. That's for you, my brother. Love you too, bro. Take care of business, take care of family, and we'll see you. That dude chasing, little chaser with that. It's that hot peach of mine. It's not. It's a little better than what it was. Not real peachy, but it's sweet. Got a good, unique sweetness to it. Finally got my column put together. Hopefully, I'll be using it soon. But I got to get me some grains going. Once I guess after I get back from Maggie in a couple of weeks, I'll focus in on doing some grains. I'm going to do some. I've got some yellow label angel yeast I was talking about earlier. It's those that don't know, they've got a yeast out now that you don't have to convert the grains, right? You don't have to use the enzymes. This has the enzymes built into it. It's got a goji yeast. It's a fungus that helps break down the sugars, right, naturally, and takes a little longer, from what I understand. And some people love it. Some people don't care for the flavor of it. It's one of those things. It's opinion. But I'm gonna try some. I'm gonna try to do exactly the same amounts. One, I'm going to do the conversion, use my high temp alpha and liquid glucose. And then the other one, and of course, a little powdered at 150. And then I'm going to try the just the yellow label angel yeast on the other, and let it convert. And I know it's going to take longer, but I'm just curious as to what my finishing, alcohol will be like, and how much I'll get out of it, and what will be the quality of it. So I'll measure each closely, total alcohol, because I run it down pretty well into the tails. I'm going to do high proof on my potatoes. I've got that column for that, but on the grain, no, I usually come off at about 140, 150, and that's perfectly fine with me. I don't want any higher. But with the potato, to make a real vodka, and to clean up some other stuff like that watermelon that didn't do so well I was talking about earlier. Yeah, I'll use column for that and clean it up, and make some neutrals out of that. But neutral, kind of a misnomer. You still get good flavor, and get good sweetness if you get a good mash. But it's cheesing up a little bit on me right now, so it should have some pretty good flavors. It's got a lacto on it for those that cheesing up. It's got some lacto, and that lacto will consume some of the alcohols. It's not gonna. It pretty much finished before it finished pretty much before the lacto came, so that's fine with me. Probably a little calm yeast in there as well going, but mostly a lacto on top, and that's fine because it's just going to consume a little bit of the alcohol, but it should be pretty good. And I didn't do it intentionally. I was just waiting on this column, and then it came broke, and I ordered parts, and waiting on that to come in, and yeah, it's been a pain in the ass. Definitely a learning experience. Anytime you order anything, open it up when you get it, regardless of how long it's going to be until you're going to use it, to make sure that there's no broken parts. And don't just open up the box, look, say, man, everything looks good. Open up every single box and make sure everything's there. And yeah, I made that mistake. You'd think somebody wouldn't make such simple, stupid mistakes, but we get a little apathetic and lazy at times, I guess. Yeah, just assume it looks okay. Everything looks well. It's packaged well. One of my gloves was busted, so yeah. And I waited too long to return it, so it was a pain in the ass I had to deal with. And yeah. That's the way it goes. Wonder what old Clint's up to. I guess he's busy as hell. Making that money. Oh, what about leaving it on the cob? No, I wouldn't freeze it on the cob. No, I wouldn't try to freeze it that way. I'm guessing it's possible. Let me ask the pro. Babe, can you blanch it on the cob and freeze it that way, or think so? Is it? She says, yeah, you can do it that way. They have it at the store like that too. We just cut it all off. It just takes up a lot less room. Now this is a potato. It's a potato mash for vodka. The watermelon it was watermelon and sugar. So, but I'm not going to combine those. I'm just going to run them separately. I'll just have to proof down all that watermelon that I had and the tails and throw them on in there, and then the potatoes. I'll have to. That'll be 2 runs actually for the potatoes. And then with the watermelon, I'll probably throw that in there. And I've got some old wine that's been in the refrigerator for a long time. I've got some old shine that's been in there. And I may just throw a lot of that together and just kind of clean it up. And, some of the old brandies and stuff that's sat around for a while that's esterified that, may be good. Most of it's pretty good. I guess just that watermelon really is the only thing that sucks. But I'll definitely run that again. But I'll run some old wine. I've got some old fruit wine and some plum wine that's a little bit past its best date. So not all wines are like grapes. So like plums and strawberries and certain other fruits, they just don't make a long lasting wine and get better with time like grapes do, right? they're just chemically not like that. So they start losing their flavor, and some actually start tasting bad, So the plum being one of them, it's not near as good as what it used to be. It was a little sweeter. So I think some of that sweetness is gone over time. Probably didn't get all the yeast killed out, and it probably maybe fermented in the bottle a little bit longer. And the potassium sorbate didn't, get put in there soon enough, and it might have turned dry while it was in the bottle. But it's just not as good as what it used to be. And I got maybe a case of that or two that I can put in there as well. Just neutralize every bit of it. And it's going to be great. It always works out that way. You have a bunch of shit you just throw in, don't even think about it. And then it turns out one of the best things you've ever made. And then you're scratching your head. Well, how much of this, that, trying to replicate it. And it's just, yeah, that's the way those things usually work out. So I'll probably write it all down real well and document it in case it happens. Yeah, I've got some plum wine. We don't drink as much wine now that we found out that Ann has diabetes. So we've slowed down on our wine consumption. But all the grape wines that I'll save those because those just get better over time. But a lot of the fruit, the blackberries, blueberry, the plum, a lot of those will get run into brandy now. But there's nothing wrong with the sugar wash. Every once in a while, you just want to make some liquor and you don't want to deal with buying fruit or deal with conversion and all that. You just want to put together a wash and distill it to high proof and proof it down. And it's not that bad, I mean, I've actually made some pretty good sugar shine, and some rums, good rums with brown sugar and molasses and sugar and racked it twice. What do you mean? You just pulled it off the grain, or you just pulled it off the yeast bed? When you talk about racking it, you just siphoned it off the yeast bed? Well, sometimes that might have been what's holding that flavor because, yeast bed can be good or bad. It'll definitely hold the flavor and it can also muddy flavor. It can give it too much and be kind of muddied and yeasty. So it may just not have as much depth and bold smack you flavor as what it once had, maybe a little more delicate flavor. Some people may see that as a plus, Irish, and some people may see that like you do. It just doesn't taste as good and full flavored like it used to. But yeah, it'll definitely lighten it up when you get it off that yeast bed. And like in wines, you definitely want to get it off that yeast bed because it can contribute some off flavors, right? And you want to try to get it off that and stop the fermentation process and still maintain some sweetness. That's why a lot of times we'll add the potassium metabisulfate or the potassium sorbate to kill off the yeast or neuter it so it can't reproduce. So we can maintain some of that sweetness, but stop the fermentation process. So getting it off those yeast, can also yeast that are at the end of their life and are kind of stressing either due to high alcohol content or lack of nutrients and, dying off because of that, can create some stresses. So, most all your wines and everything after primary fermentation is done after a week or two, boom, they take it off that yeast as quickly as they can without actually, affecting it. So, it's just a preference. Some people might prefer it, but, better with that lighter tasting. Um, and some people won't. It's nothing wrong with either way. Some people like a fuller bodied, richer flavor with the mead, and some people would like the lightness and maybe get some of the floral notes that come with that lightness as opposed to a heavier, flavor. So, there's no right or wrong there. It's just whatever you prefer. More about the bite and the hard. I like rich flavors too, but a lot of people don't like rich flavors. It's like a lot of times I like to pour my distillate back into the back set and redistill it several times that way, and that's the way they make a cognac. Um, that for some people that's too much flavors. It's muddied flavors. It's just too much, and it's just too rich, too much flavor. They prefer a lighter, and there's no right or wrong. It's just whatever you like. But I've been known to do the cognac route, especially on some brandies. And my thought process is, why pour it in water and then redistill it? That just kind of dilutes the flavor when I can pour it back into that back set, which is pure flavor minus alcohol minus water. It's concentrated flavor, and as long as it's not scorched, it's adding it back into that flavor. And I've just done some triple distillations with cognac style, and it turned out really well. Now, a lot of people would say it's muddied flavor. It's just too much, too rich. And other people would prefer a lighter flavor, and some people would love that richness, and there's no right or wrong to that. It's just presented in a different jar, and a bottle, and labeled something different in a store. So it would be more of a whiskey or a cognac. Took 100 proof sugar shine that tasted bad, right? And used turbo yeast, yeah. So when I got it down to 90 proof on a run of corn liquor, I shut it down and waited until the next day. So I added 5 gallons of the sugar wash, and it almost tasted as good as the first part. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I mean, there's a lot of ways to, as long as it's not scorched, there's a lot of ways to fix, things that don't taste good. That's like this watermelon. It just doesn't taste that great. So I know I'm going to be able to fix it because it didn't scorch. It's not a scorched ruin. Scorching is really hard to reverse. It's hard to column that off. It's hard to neutral that off. And if you scorch it bad, forget about it. It's weed killer. It's just not going to work. And it's hard to, I say if you got a shine that's sour, make limoncello. And if you got something that's grungy, mix it with like the root beer and make a root beer like I did with some of my banana. That was great. Some people didn't like it because it's grungy, but it didn't have notes. It didn't have a no beginning, end, middle, and end note. It had one note, and that was grunge. And it was good, but it just didn't have character, right? So I mixed that with root beer and made a root beer shine, and it's awesome. That grunginess works so well with it. So, sometimes you just got to go with whatever you got. So if you got something sour, make a limoncello, or make a, something that works well, make a lemonade, lemon shine, whatever. Yeah, the turbo yeast, it generally has a bad flavor because it's got too much nutrients in it. It was never really, a lot of it was never really intended for using for distillation for something you drank. It was more geared towards a fast, complete fermentation for fuel production. Now, some turbo yeast weren't. They were made for wine and grains, but most of it, was made primarily as a fast for fuel because they needed it to distill. To ferment fast and distill it, get it done quick. Time is money. And the quicker you could do that, the cheaper it was. That's why they used, the dent corn instead of sugar. It's cheaper. And that with the turbo, had everything ready to go, pre-mixed, pre-measured, boom, boom, boom. And 2 days, 2.5 days, it was done, boom, high proof, distill it on a column, make, rocket fuel out of it and put it E85 into a car, and get all the moisture or water out of it we can. Mix it with a few additives, mix it with gasoline, make a 10% ethanol, gasohol, whatever, and pump it out the door, and it's just, it kind of got a bad name, but I think most of the bad flavor comes from a lot of them having too much nutrients, and too much nutrients can be as bad or worse than none or not enough. So it's definitely, a lot of people think a little bit of this is good, more is better. No, not the case with nutrients. You definitely don't want to overdo it, especially if you're using like a DAP with urea and other things. You definitely don't want to overdo those. But if you like a Fermo, where it's just yeast holes, it's kind of hard to overdo those, dead yeast. But as far as that goes, we've talked about it. You can easily make your own nutrients out of that yeast bed. When you're done, boil that, clean it up with some distilled water, get all your alcohol out of it, save it, and you have really good yeast nutrients. And you won't have to pay for them. All right, Stephen. Yeah, it's getting about that time. Anne's got to head to bed. She's got to be up at 5 in the morning, so it'll be a good time to call it, I guess. We had a good show. Glad everybody tuned in. Missed old Clint and a few others tonight. I guess being, school's out. A lot of people going on vacations. A lot of people spending some time with family, which is a great thing. So hopefully everybody's having a good time and spending time with family and enjoying it with friends and family. But we'll see you back here on Tuesday. That'll be Tuesday the 14th at 8 Eastern time. So until then, everybody have a great weekend and try to stay out of trouble. Don't drink and drive. Shine on. Peace out. We'll see y'all Tuesday.